Hello everyone, it's Ready here, and today we're going to be talking about which RAM I bought for my new PC. So let's get right into it. With RAM, what do you need to know? Well, there's different companies that make RAM, but that probably isn't going to be a huge factor in your buying decision. Most likely you're just going to get one from a pretty well-known brand. Those are going to be the easiest to find in stock. The second thing you need to know is that there's different stick configurations. So you can buy sticks of 4 gigabytes, 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, maybe even 32. You probably can, but that's like probably quite expensive. So are there any benefits to running more sticks in your system? Let's say you want like 16 gigabytes in your system. Is there a benefit to getting 4 sticks of 4 gigabytes versus 2 sticks of 8 gigabytes versus 1 stick of 16 gigabytes? Well, if you're running one of the latest AMD CPUs, I recommend checking out Gamer's Nexus video. I'll put it right here, where he goes over the benefits of running multiple sticks of RAM, and there seems to be a small performance boost if you run 4 sticks versus 2 sticks, and maybe 2 sticks versus 1 as well, but I don't remember. You're gonna have to check the video. But for most people, the answer is no. There's gonna be no noticeable performance gain. So once you figured that like the number of sticks doesn't really matter, and even if you have one of the new AMD chips, it still doesn't really matter. We're talking a very small performance boost. Like, sure, they were able to get up to 10%, but these guys are overclocking as well. They're doing all kinds of things to get like the most juice out of their system. So once you figured out that the sticks don't really matter, you can move that aside. So don't worry about the number of sticks. My recommendation is usually just go for 2. Then the next question is, what size of memory do I need? So you can usually choose between 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, or 32 gigabytes. Now, I found that 16 was the sweet spot because if you're going to be running games, most of them are now using slightly above 8 gigabytes of RAM. So you are going to see a noticeable performance benefit from 16 gigabytes. But currently there's pretty much no games which are using all the way up to 16 gigabytes. And even the ones that are, you're going to need to be running like 4K or 8K settings in like ultra max quality. So for now, 32 would be overkill just for gaming. And 16 gigabytes is really more than enough. If you're not gaming, if you're not doing any kind of workstation activities and you're just building a PC to like browse the internet and to message your friends and to maybe run a couple games here and there, and you don't care about like the best settings ever, sure, you can go for 8 gigabytes of RAM now. And if you notice that your system is kind of running slow for whatever reason, you can always just buy another stick of exactly that same RAM and put it in your system. So that's the nice thing about RAM. You can always add more of it. I think most motherboards have 4 slots that you can fill with RAM. And yeah, so that takes care of the gigabyte side of it. That I think 16 is really the sweet spot, and it's going to be more than enough for the coming like 3 years for sure. Maybe at that point, if 4K really becomes more common, you might want to consider upgrading to 32, but at that point you can just buy like more sticks of RAM. You've had now a couple years to save up, and when it becomes relevant, you can make that jump, right? The other reason why you might want 32 gigabytes of RAM is if you're doing some kind of workstation activities. But if you are, you probably know that you need that much RAM. So I don't know, if you're doing really complex 3D rendering, if you want to render like a battleship or something, you're probably going to need more than 32 gigabytes of RAM. You're probably working on very specific equipment at your company to do that kind of stuff. If you're doing kind of heavy video encoding, or like you want to make clips and you want to make videos and you're really working in like 4K 60 FPS or higher, even 4K 30 FPS, I don't think it's necessary. Then, you will start to see some benefits of running 32 gigabytes just because those video recording files are so big that your system is going to appreciate having more headroom to kind of load those into the side. But yeah, like I said, my recommendation is just start with 16 And if you do find that you need more RAM, you see that programs are like suffering or for whatever reason, you probably notice it. You can always buy more and go for 32. But I really think that for 99% of people, 16 is going to be enough. I plan on gaming in high FPS, 1440p, streaming all the time, making YouTube videos, no problem. I think 16 is going to be more than enough. So that's why I went with 16 gigabytes. I really did a lot of research on this. So that takes care of the size. The next thing you have to know about RAM is that there's two more things you need to care about. You have the megahertz. So this is usually ranging from like 2000 megahertz to approximately 4000 megahertz. And you have CL number, which stands for CAS latency. And this ranges from something like CL12 all the way to like CL, I think 20, and those are kind of like the extreme ranges. Now, depending on your different CPU, it's probably worth checking like if your CPU really benefits from having a higher clock speed like megahertz. So I believe that the Ryzen CPUs really do benefit from having more megahertz, while the Intel CPUs benefit from having they don't benefit that much from higher megahertz RAM speed, but they will benefit a lot by lower latency RAM speed. So please double check it for your own CPU. I'm going to go off on a little tangent about Ryzen CPUs, and then I'm going to give you what I think is right for Intel, but please check it because I'm not sure. So for Ryzen CPUs, you would rather have something with higher clock speeds and kind of a worse latency. So with the latency, the lower the number, the better it is, right? You want like low latency is good. So one trick here is that if you have, for example, like 3800 megahertz CL18, that can be equivalent to like 3200 megahertz, which has lower clocks, but is CL12 because it has much lower latency. So those two can be like equivalent. I'm kind of made up the numbers here, but just so you're aware that you need to look at both numbers, right? So just because it has higher megahertz doesn't mean you can ignore the CL number. Absolutely not. You need to make sure you're comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. So you kind of need to decide for both which is going to be your sweet spot. So for Intel, you're going to want more of a lower latency, and you can sacrifice a little bit regarding the clock speed. While with Ryzen, it should be a bit the other way around. You would prefer to have a higher clock speed and a lower latency. So because, like I said, you can kind of mix and match between the two, for Intel, you're better off getting slightly lower clocks and slightly better latency for a given price, while for AMD, you're better off getting slightly higher clocks and a slightly worse latency for that same given price, right? So since I'm building an AMD build, I'm going to buy 3600 megahertz CL16. That seems to be the sweet spot for these types of builds, right? After that, you're not really getting any performance gain if you go higher clock speeds. And CAS latency, yeah, you know, it gets more expensive the lower you go, and the price jump can be quite strong. The price jump can be quite extreme. So figure out what your budget is. Try to find the best megahertz and lower latency thing that you can for that budget. But if your budget is too low to get the combination of both of those that you really want, for Intel, you're better off prioritizing the CAS latency. And for Ryzen, you're better off prioritizing a bit higher megahertz. So that's what you have to know about the RAM. That's why I chose my 3600 megahertz CL16 kit from Crucial brand model line ballistics. It's red. That's cool. And I'm going to be really happy with it. And one thing you guys should know for the future is that starting with Intel's next generation of chips, so the ones coming in like late 2021, I believe, we're going to start seeing DDR5 RAM. So for now, pretty much all RAM is DDR4. That's been the standard for a while now. but we're going to start seeing DDR5 RAM, which is going to take full advantage of PCI Gen 4 lanes on your motherboard. And while now kind of the top range that we can get for RAM is on PCI Gen 3 is around like 4000 megahertz. With DDR5, that's going to shift again. And now the average range is going to be like 4000 to 5000. So it's going to be quite a lot faster than PCI Gen 3, from like double to like 50% faster pretty much. So when that time comes, which is going to be in a year, you're probably going to only be able to buy them for pretty high prices. So I think that PCI Gen 4 RAM, just like if you watch my video about the SSDs, it's coming soon. With the SSDs, it came like a month ago. But with the RAM, we're still a year off at least. And by that time, you're only going to get like really expensive ones. So until it becomes reasonable to buy it, it's still going to take like 2-3 years. And at that point, you're probably going to be looking at a CPU and a motherboard upgrade anyway. Maybe, I think for most people, they like to upgrade their build every 4 or 5 years. So yeah, at that point, you can cross that bridge when you get there. For now, this is going to be probably the best bang for your buck RAM. And price, I'll mention it at the very end. I bought mine for 68 Great British pounds from the UK, which translates to approximately, I'm just doing this number in my head, all right? It's approximately like 80 euros or like 95-ish US dollars, something like that. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Remember, choose your price range. If you have Intel, prioritize lower latency. If you have Ryzen, prioritize higher clock speeds. And you're going to make a good decision. If you want to as well check if your RAM is going to be compatible with your motherboard, you can always look at your motherboard compatibility lists. In theory, all DDR4 RAM should work with like whatever motherboard, as long as you have one for... Yeah, they should just work with whatever motherboard, but in practice, that seems to not always be the case. So just to be safe, choose your RAM. Just double check if it works on your motherboard. Have a look at forums or whatever, and you'll make sure you made a good buying decision. Thanks a lot for watching, and I have way more videos to record, so see you guys in the next one.